We are a non-traditional university for traditional knowledge. We seek to build a global renaissance based on Indic civilizational thought. We are pursuing multi-dimensional strategy across time, space, and cause by establishing centers of excellence, transforming intellectuals, and building an ecosystem. We offer grants and scholarships for individuals in pursuit and in the spread of Indic knowledge. We build partnerships and alliances with universities, schools, colleges, research institutions, NGOs, media, etc. We have a number of platforms that promote and deliver Indic content, services, and experiences. We conduct offline and online courses. We guide research on select topics through our fellowship programs. We publish books by academics and public intellectuals across all genres. We conduct events such as this one, conferences, seminars, workshops, and talks through our growing global network of chapters. In the US, we are a 501c3 not-for-profit organization, and all contributions made to it are tax exempt. Please visit our website at INDICA Academy, explore and navigate our activities, platforms, and initiatives. We have an active presence on social media. Please follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, where we are at INDICA Academy. So before we start our session and hand it over to Manjulaji, I will request Nishant ji to make an invocation. Quick, please.
Namaste, everyone. Thanks for joining. We'll start with a quick prayer, as we always do. Om Asato Ma Satgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityor Ma Mritam Gamaya Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.
Thank you, Nishantji. And one more time before I hand over to Manjulaji, if you have questions, please put your questions in Q&A section at the bottom of your screen, and we'll try to take as many questions as possible. And now I hand it over to Manjulaji. Manjulaji, take it away, please.
Thank you, Authansji. First, it is my pleasure to introduce Nitin Sridhar, who is a civil engineer by training, but a writer by passion. After taking to full-time writing, he has been an editor at various places, including India Facts, and more recently at Advait Academy, which is dedicated to the dissemination of Indian philosophical thought. He's also a consulting editor at Indic Today. He writes on social and political issues, topics in religion, spirituality, and ecology. He has written extensively, including 3 books, many articles, of course, 3 books titled Samanya Dharma, Musings on Hinduism, and Menstruation Across Cultures, a Historical Perspective. This last book is the basis of today's discussion. This book examines notions and practices prevalent in different cultures and religions from across the world about menstruation. The book was originally published by Vitasta. Now a North American edition has been brought out by Global Collective Publishers. Oh, and by the way, they're offering a 20% discount with the code Sridhar108. I request the readers to please avail of this opportunity. The book has garnered wide national and international acclaim from many luminaries and thinkers like Amish Tripathi, Sumedha Oja, Madhu Kishwar, and Vivek Devroy. Nitin lives in Mysore. Thank you very much, Nitin, for joining us today, and welcome to INDICA webinar. Thanks.
Thank you, Manjulaji, and thank you, INDICA Academy, Avatansi, and others for organizing this book launch and for this session. I'm very happy to be here.
Thank you. Now, a very, very brief, introduction to the book. I believe today's generation has perhaps forgotten how to be in tune with nature. People are forced to be up and about. They ignore what their bodies tell them. Yoga and Ayurveda knew how to be attuned to nature. Nitin Sridhar has presented the yoga and Ayurvedic principles and practices during menstruation in this book. He presents Hindu attitudes and notions towards menstruation and femininity in general. He also presents Tantra and Shakta principles that impinge on this topic. Not to be satisfied with writing only about Hindu practices on menstruation, Nitin also discusses practices across many cultures, Greek, Roman, even abstruse ones, including the Mesopotamian and Egyptian cultures. He talks about goddesses like Diana, Artemis, Isis, not just Durga and Parvati. He also talks about social issues affected by and affecting menstruation, like affected by menstruation, affecting menstruation, and the present day lives of women. This is a very comprehensive book, but it is written in a very simple and lucid style. I congratulate the author for writing this. I encourage the readers to enjoy this book. And now, Nitin Sridhar ji, would you tell us about, the highlights? We've been looking forward to this conversation. This book is an achievement. My congratulations to Nitin for the North American launch. So I would please invite him to share a few highlights and tell us about the book. Tell us about your journey writing this book, conceptualizing, writing, and presenting it to a worldwide audience. Take it away, please.
Thank you, Manjulaji. I just want to show up this. I think this is not visible now. Yeah. So, but you can see in the virtual background the cover of the North American edition. So the journey of the book started at least 7 years ago, in 2015, when the Shabarimala temple entry issue was greatly in the news. There was a lot of controversies. People came on the streets to protest. So many things were happening. So the evolution of this book has its seeds in that struggle. And one of the things that happened was the media narrative regarding the temple entry issue. While the temple practices is governed by the nature of the deity, the Ayappa Swami, who is there as Naishtika Brahmachari, the media narrative was built that the prevention of entry of women of a particular age in the temple is because of menstruation. And even otherwise, in general, we see that Hindu women don't go to temples during their monthly periods. So this was the underlying narrative that this practice is somehow oppressive to women, somehow demeaning to women, somehow insulting to women, somehow degrades them, morally considers them inferior, degrading, etc. So I wanted to study, explore for myself to know what is the truth. I mean, there is narrative, but is there a basis for that narrative? What is the Hindu view of the issue? So because all the counter responses to the mainstream narrative focused on the temple issue, but not the underlying message regarding menstruation. So then I started my study for the next 4-5 months. I studied various texts from from the Yajurveda text to the Purana, the Ityasas, but most importantly, the Dharma Shastra text, because all these practices comes under the purview of the Purushartha of Dharma, and the most authoritative text in the Dharma genre is the Dharma Shastra, which is the Smritis and other literature. And I also studied the Ayurveda and other aspects of the issue. And I realized that the kind of narrative, the unidimensional narrative, the narrative is unidimensional, distorted, and deeply problematic, whereas the reality is completely different. So, to my surprise, then I wanted to share these findings, and I wrote a series of articles in India Facts titled "Hindu Views of Menstruation." It's a six-part article. It has been read by. It has received views more than 150,000 or something like that. So it was highly popular, highly well received article. And based on that, Renu Kaul Vermaji of Vitasta publication, she read those articles and she approached me to expand it into a book. I immediately agreed, but then I thought, what should I write? I mean, I've already written enough about the Hindu practices. I can expand it more, but I did not see a point to expand it more on what I have already conveyed. So instead of working more and expanding them, I thought there is something missing in this. It is okay to provide Hindu perspective, but that would makes much more sense only when we have when we are able to make comparison with other cultures, other religions, practices and beliefs on one hand, and with modernity, how the modern so-called scientific view is perceiving the issue. So that is how this book came about. It took me 3 years to research and write, and you asked me to mention certain salient features. So while I was reading the primary material, both for Hinduism and later for other religions and cultures, I realized that there are two different aspects to the issue, which at a first glance appear contradictory, but which are actually complementary. One of the most important notions that is associated with menstruation across the world, be it very ancient Western cultures such as Greek, Roman, Egyptian, Mesopotamian, or the Eastern cultures such as Hinduism, Buddhism, etc., or even the Abrahamic religions such as Christianity, Judaism, Islam, etc., is the notion of impurity. Different people call by different names, but this notion of impurity is there even among very, very widely separated tribal communities in Northern America, Southern America, Africa, Southeast Asia, everywhere this is present. But what was interesting I found was that though in English we can call all as impurity, the definition, the notion of impurity changes. Today, for example, when we speak about Hindu notions of menstruation, we say menstruation is impure, the menstruating women is impure. We get a very negative connotation when we hear the term impurity. Somehow, the mainstream narrative is based on this perception that impurity means degradation, moral inferiority, sinfulness, or something like that. And that is why they posit Hindu practices as oppressing or degrading women. But interestingly, the Sanskrit term is ashaucha, and it does not carry any of these moral connotations, any of these connotations that we consider as degrading to women. The term ashaucha has a very technical meaning, as one is of course ritual impurity, but also of the notion of incompetence. To understand it, I'll just elaborate a little bit because this is important. The Sanskrit term for menstruation, one of the terms is Rajashrava. Rajashrava, the flow of Raja. So this Raja at a physical level refers to the blood. There is a flow of blood. At a pranic level, there is a heightened condition of Rajasic energy. There is a heightened condition of Apanavayu, and that Rajasic energy is being removed from the body through the blood. And at the mental level, there is a heightened condition of Rajoguna, and this manifests in the form of irritation, anger, mood swings that many women face. This condition, the heightened condition of rajas, is called as ashaucha. Why? Because it makes one incompetent, ineligible to perform certain actions, such as performing a puja or going to a temple. Because all these spiritual, sacred activities, ritualistic activities, require that we are in a state of shaucha or purity, which means that at the physical level, there is no flow of blood, there is no flow of any bodily impurities or anything. For example, we take a bath before doing puja, right? So that all our sweat and everything is wiped out. Similarly, at the level of the prana, there is a balance between all the pranas. At the level of the mind, there is a sattva guna pradhana, not the rajo guna. So these are all the ritualistic criteria. Because during menstruation, those criteria are not there, they become ineligible to perform those actions. So that is one aspect. That is why it is called as ashaucha, because of heightened condition of rajas. So there is no moral judgment here. The women do not become morally inferior. Yeah. The other aspect is, but however, this understanding of ashaucha as incompetence and shaucha as competence or vitality is found in ancient civilizations such as Greek, Roman, and Egyptian, and others also. But this is completely missing in Christianity and other Abrahamic religions. They redefine, they borrow the term, the category of impurity from the Greco-Romans, and the Christianity redefines it as a state of sinfulness by connecting it to the story of the Adam and Eve and the fall of the Adam and Eve from the, after eating the forbidden apple and all. So they say that because of Eve's action of instigating Adam and because of the fall of them, Eve and her descendants, the women, were additionally punished by God. And every month during menstruation, they partake in that sinfulness. So menstruation is a state of sinfulness in the Abrahamic definition, wherein it's a moral judgment that they are immoral. This is missing in all ancient Indo-European cultures. And this was one of the salient features that I discovered in my study. And it is because of this changing definitions that why in the Hindu context as well as in Greco-Roman context, the notion of impurity is not only not a moral judgment, but it is also a twin aspect or the other aspect of sacredness. It is connected deeply with sacredness. To take up the Hindu issue, for example, ashaucha makes one temporarily in a state of impurity, ritual impurity, but at the same time, menstruation itself is recognized as a purificatory process, which is deeply connected to childbirth, and as a result, it is also celebrated. It is also considered a sacred process, and we have deities, we have festivals celebrating this. Similarly, you also mentioned in the introduction about Diana and all. So I have given details about this in book. In the Greeks, they have deities such as Artemis, Diana in Rome, and Mesopotamia, and all have Inanna, etc. are considered presiding deities of menstruation. It's just like we have Uma or Parvati as presiding deity. So this, because this impurity we are speaking about is mainly about incompetence for certain rituals, whereas the menstruation itself is kind of an austerity process. It is a tapasya. That is why it's called as Rajo Dharma in Dharma Shastra. Rajo Dharma. The practices which are suggested for women during menstruation, such as taking rest, not cooking, not doing any physically straining activities, taking care of herself. These are termed as Rajo Dharma. And in Ayurveda, it is called as Rajaswala Paricharya, lifestyle of a practice suggested for women. So there is a health angle, Ayurvedic angle, because it is helpful for women to not to put too much work, too much hard work, because that harms them. Too much hard work causes imbalance to the doshas. And on the other hand, it's also dharma, because that itself is a tapasya and austerity. So her ineligibility to perform certain yajna or puja or going to temple does not prevent her from attaining shreyas or spiritual upliftment, right? So this is a comprehensive perspective, and this kind of sacred aspect is present in ancient civilizations, and we have a lot of comparative thing here. But this is missing predominantly in the Abrahamic regions. So these are the twin findings, I should say, the most salient findings of my study, which I have showed in my book also.
Awesome.
And the whole thing is, of course, completely distinct, different from the modern approach, which kind of reduces menstruation to merely a bodily activity, disregarding all subjective experiences, and the making the whole thing kind of,
Totally.
making the women kind of hate it, or kind of feel that it is something to be gotten over with. Yeah.
The hatred part, I don't know how you can get over that. But you have touched upon the concept of ashaucha or impurity. At the same time, you are talking about, like, dharma. It's a powerful dharmic concept. Menstruation is a dharmic concept. It is because it is associated with childbirth, etc. And you talk about it as a period of austerity and all that, self purification. These are all pretty complex notions, and at a practical level, it is very difficult to translate the theory into the practicum, if you will. Don't you see these things as very contradictory, difficult to practice kind of notions? So you talked about, like, what is it, Rajasvala Paricharya, you mentioned that. You also talk about this, what is it, there is a story about, like, Indra trying to lose his sin, because of Brahma Hatya. He's committed some Brahma Hatya, and he has to lose his sin. So he gives a third of his, sin to women. So menstruation is actually seen as a sin. So there is another concept that you actually introduced, that it is part of the sin that he's atoning for, just like, in Abrahamic kind of a notion. So how do you reconcile these apparent contradictions?
Wonderful question. I'll come to the practical part later, but first let me address the question of Indra's story. While the term I would prefer to use is papam rather than sin. Here,
Okay.
though, it's English, we
Good
translate
point.
as sin.
Thank you.
But there is a distinction between the Abrahamic concept of sin and our concept of papam. So what Indra transmits is that 1/3 of papam, not the Abrahamic concept of sin. And the story, this is another interesting study, that both in Christianity and in Hinduism, we can say that menstruation is associated with sin. But the way that association comes is completely different. As I explained earlier, in the Christian story, menstruation is a punishment for the Eve's committing the sin of instigating Adam, and both of them eating the forbidden apple, and hence getting kicked out of the Garden of Eden. So the Eve and following her, all the women were additionally punished for that sin. But here it is not so. Here the one who had committed the papam is not the women, it is Indra. So he did, the story is in the Yajurveda itself, and it has been repeated with some modifications, Puranas, etc.
Please go ahead and tell the story. It's actually very,
Yes. That story is very important from a hermeneutic perspective, because it holds the key to interpreting the Hindu practice of menstruation. So basically, there is one Vishwarupa who is the priest to the Devas, and he is silently giving. He publicly says that these portions has to go to the Devas, but the rightful portions which has to go to the Devas, he silently is giving to the Asuras. So Indra goes and slays him for this transgression, and he is correct in his position. But still, because Vishwarupa was a Brahmana, there was a Brahma Hatya involved, and Indra was followed by that Brahma Hatya Papam everywhere. So to ensure that this Brahma Hatya Papam was removed, he requested the Bhumi, the trees, and the women each to take 1/3 of that Papam. In return, he also promised them a boon, right? So in the case of the Bhumi mother being compassionate, She agreed, and this menstruation manifested as the fissures in the earth, that naturally appear. In return, she got the boon that digging of the earth will not kill her and will not have a
Harm her.
long-term effect, because with time it will be filled on its own if the naturally it is allowed to do so. Similar, the trees, the menstruation, the papam manifested as the Indra's papam manifested as the sap of the tree. But in return, they got the boon that the trimming of the trees, cutting of the leaves and the branches, it will not kill them. It will help them to grow. Similarly, with women, that last 1/3 of the papam of Indra's Brahmatya manifested as menstruation. In return, the women got the boon that they will be able to enjoy sexual intercourse, and towards the end, they can give the childbirth. So, so this is the interesting thing here is, and then the Yajurveda says that because of this papam associated with menstruation, during those periods, she should not cook food. People should not eat the food cooked by such a menstruating woman. She should not comb her hair. She should not do the spinning activity and similar other activities. These restrictions, which later became Rajo Dharma and Rajasala Paricharya, has been given in a concise form. So now, how do we understand here? Let us understand what is Brahma Hatya. Hatya, Brahma. Brahma means has many different connotations. One of the connotation is, of course, the potentiality to give, to create. Because who is Lord Brahma? Brahma is one who is a Srishtikarta. He creates. So he has the potential to create. So Brahma Hatya means destruction of that potentiality to create. So what is this referring to? What potentiality to create? And then the women's condition, manifestation of menstruation is compared to the sap in a tree or a fissure in the earth. So what does it mean? That menstruation is a natural process. So that is the first lesson we learn from the story, that it is a natural process, just like a fissures in a earth. Now, this being a natural process, this refers to a biological process, how it happens. So what happens in the menstrual cycle? An egg is ready for the fertilization. When that fertilization for giving childbirth does not happen, the unfertilized egg along with other impurities are removed from the body when the periods happen, right? So this non-fertilization of the egg, because the egg represents the potentiality to give birth, potentiality to bring a jiva to the physical plane. That potentiality is being killed in a metaphorical way. And that is why abortion is also considered a huge sin. It is considered as a Brahma Hatya.
Bhruna Hatya.
Bhruna Hatya. And this Bhruna Hatya is considered as equivalent to Brahma Hatya. Right? So the connection is that because their potentiality to give birth is being killed, so to speak, there is a papam which associates by this natural process. Right? It is not that somehow they are becoming sinful. The story is not saying that women have become sinful. It's simply saying that because of this natural process of non-fertilization, it results in certain papam, adrishtafalam being associated, the negative adrishtafalam. But menstruation as a purification process, it frees women from that negative adrishtafalam, negative papam, right? It frees them. That is why it is called as Rajo Dharma. The practices, the prohibitions, etc. given at the second part of the story, which becomes the Rajo Dharma and Rajasvale Paricharya, when they are practiced as tapasya, as austerity, that austerity has many, many benefits. One of the most important of them, even if you don't practice that, the menstruation process itself is a kind of a tapasya. It's a self-purification process, and it frees them of this papam that unintentionally acquires to a woman because of non-fertilization of the egg. So this is how the notion of papam is here. That the function of the notion of papam here is to understand that there is an ashaucha associated with menstruation, because of which the women becomes ineligible to perform certain actions such as puja and havan, yajna, homa, or going to temple, and certain other actions becomes uh, impractical or unsuitable for her. For example, putting lot of physical exercise or
Or cooking.
cooking and such activities. And cooking is also, she should not do it because cooking involves uh, transmission of energy. Yes,
Okay.
transmission of rajasic energy also. But also cooking involves lot of physical exertion. That is why. So there is twin reasons. One is her own health benefits. The other is the pranic work. So whatever it is, so this is how the notion of papam in the Hindu story is not negative. It is merely describing a natural biological phenomenon and the implications of that phenomenon in a ritualistic sense, implications at the physical level, the Annamaya Kosha, implications at the pranic level, the Pranamaya Kosha, and implications at the Manomaya Kosha. And we have already seen by Rajashrava it is called menstruation. Now coming to your second part of the question about the activities of prohibitions and the lifestyle itself, I do not think that all these are impractical today just because we are living in a fast-paced life. Some may be difficult, some may not be possible for everyone, but I am sure many are possible for most of the people. And for this reason, at the end of the very end of the book, there is a section actually. I think this is just before the glossary and all. This is called recommendations. Some practices that modern women can observe during monthly periods. This is just distilled version of the what I have mentioned in the Hindu tradition. One important aspect that can be practiced by anyone and everyone, irrespective of their career or studenthood, whatever it is the food. And this is the most important point as far as the health is concerned, as far as the Ayurvedic concern is concerned. That the Ayurvedic text says that menstruating women, the women in their periods must eat very light foods, preferably made of ghee, rice, and milk. But even otherwise, very light food made of barley and such things. Avoiding non-vegetarian food during those 3 days, not other days, only those 3 days because they are heavy. And avoiding junk food, outside food, eating home food, very light food, and taking them in a very small quantity, not eating to your stomach full. So this is something everybody can do, irrespective of where they are. Right?
What about bathing and combing hair and that kind of stuff?
Yes, I'm coming to that. The point is, you try to do what you can to the best of your ability because each of them has a particular effect, particular positive result. So the food is the most important thing that anybody can do. And people can try to avoid metal utensils during menstruation. That is also something most women can do, irrespective of the current fast-moving situation. Similarly, observing celibacy is another thing that can be done. All women can do. This is just a matter of 3 days. And sleeping, not sleeping on your bed, but sleeping on a mat or a charpai, not sleeping during the day. This is also most of the people can do. Now, what you are saying is about the self-adorning aspects, such as avoiding bathing, brushing, making the makeup, and all those things. The reason again is about the tridosha imbalance. All these activities affect the vata, pitta, kapha doshas and have a long-term influence on the health. Now, it is true that those women who go to office, for example, in a corporate job, it is not possible for them to not to take a bath or something like that. But for they can avoid if they want to, if they are about to go to a massage appointment, they can avoid it. Or too much of makeup, they can avoid those. Or nowadays menstrual leave concepts are also being adopted some places. Then they can take rest at home and then they can follow many of this. So the housewives in India and also many in the abroad also, they can actually implement this, not adorning and all those things. This can be implemented by those who are able to implement. The point is to try to follow it as much as possible because this is all very useful, very beneficial to women. Similarly, physical work. this is something that can be avoidable. You know, today we have these advertisements of sanitary napkins wherein say wear a napkin and win gold medal in swimming competition or athletics competition. So these kind of advertisements is promoting actually a non-healthy lifestyle, because they're giving a wrong impression to young girls. Even a very big athletes or somebody who is training hard, they can take 3 days off during those periods. Maybe sometimes the events may coincide with those days, and they can make an exception. Then that is fine. That is understandable. But they can take a 3 days off in rest of the year, right? So women have to be more aware about what is beneficial for them, and when they see these benefits for themselves, I believe that people, they will themselves voluntarily take up these activities, uh, considering all other factors and adjusting such some adjustments may be needed. Mental stress is another thing. Keeping your mind calm, focused on joyful things, and calmness is something we don't find in office environment today because it is a complete rat race. So, so taking a menstrual leave, even when there is a no really a menstrual leave, but you can put a leave during those days and work on a holiday, on a weekday or a weekend or something. I mean, these things can be adjusted, can be arrived at, worked out if possible, if women want to do it. That is a point. And religious activity is something that everybody can avoid, avoid doing any puja part, any jap, meditation, dhyan, or going to temples. This is something that every woman can avoid. And they are avoiding in India, most women, at least I'm not speaking
Everywhere,
about
actually.
the modern activist kind of people, but otherwise devout Hindus, they don't go. There is no upside down implementation of this. There is a voluntary prohibition imposed by women on themselves.
Mhm.
So I hope this addresses your question. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, it is very nuanced, actually. The book itself is extremely nuanced, but it's a very complicated topic. Most women, even modern women, they find it hard to talk about this topic. So you have analyzed this in the context of ancient Hindu thought, and then you compare it with, other religions and the modern world also. You've already addressed this part, but it is true that we live in a very commercialized world and women are commoditized. So that actually develops a certain attitude also, like, uh, women have accepted, they always do, in every age, people accept their roles and then their attitudes reflect, their adaptation to a large extent. So since we are not actually looking at women as Shakti, as we used to once upon a time, you have said already, like, you did say that it is possible to retain a lot of older practices to the modern world. But with this attitude adjustment that is required, how practical is it, in your opinion?
Yeah, I think as I mentioned just a while back, the practices themselves are quite practical. I mean, you might not be able to practice 100%, but you would, if efforts are put, then at least 50%, 60% can be definitely practiced by most women. But the question is about attitude and understanding, and therein there is a great narrative, huge narrative, um, which posits Hindu practices as some kind of superstition. We have all these scientific papers, TV ads, media documentaries, YouTube videos. All of them have created uh, a very negative portrayal of not only Hindu practices. The portrayal is basically, in the name of science and scientific breaking the myths around menstruation, they're creating modern myths, so to say, because
Absolutely.
what is called a scientific perspective is basically a Western cultural
Construct.
perspective, Western construct, but the scientific perspective is informed by the Western cultural ethos, and they're problematic. And this has been recognized. This is not something I am making up, but as I examine in my book, even certain Western scholars themselves have recognized this. That how the modern narrative is basically, for example, let us take return back to the ads that I mentioned. The most widespread common sanitary products in India. They're from brands such as Stay Free and Whisper. And in America, I think there was a brand called Freedom and all. Just talk about their names. Stay Free. What are you suggesting that women should be free from? That is a fundamental question. You are suggesting that somehow wear the pad and become free of your menstruation, your periods. So this is kind of a messaging that women has to overcome menstruation.
Totally.
Menstruation is not a part of their femininity, not part of their identity, not part of the larger sacred aspect of what is called as Dharma, what is the Shakti aspect, the connection to cosmogony, but instead it is an obstacle in their path towards success, materialistic success. And it is somehow only when they masculinize themselves by overcoming this that they will achieve emancipation in a social thing. And similarly, take the product Whisper. They say that Hinduism kind of created this as a taboo, and people have developed shamefulness. But the real shamefulness is being developed by these kind of, what is there to be whispered about? You whisper something you don't want to share publicly. But on the other hand, we publicly celebrate our festivals. We have in Kamakya, we have festivals in Odisha, we have Raja Parva. So many festivals are there. We celebrate menstruation. And if certain group of women do not feel comfortable to discuss about their periods with an outsider, that shyness is being misrepresented as shameful. So these are the issues that modernity is bringing. So in the name of science, what is happening? See, as I told in the Indra story, that Hindu perspective does not deny that there is a biological element. That is what the comparison with natural fissure and sap tries to convey. But it is saying that it is not just a biological process. The modern scientific perspective wants young women to believe that it is just a biological process and there is nothing more to it. It wants to deny all subjective experience to women, or all emotional experience to women, all cultural understanding that goes with it, all the ritualistic aspects of the issue. But Hindu perspective is more comprehensive. It says that, look, the menarche festivals, when the girl has her first period, there is a huge celebration. She's treated as a deity. She's treated as the most sacred person, as someone who needs to be celebrated. Even today, many communities in South practice this. So this celebration imparts a very positive notion of menstruation to them as something which is austerity, as a self-purification process, as something which is part of their feminine hood, as something which they should not be considered as something to get over with. As instead must be seen as the larger part of their womanhood, what makes them a woman, right? As part of the motherhood, the pregnancy, the whole thing. The best example to see is the Navadurga. In the Navaratris, we celebrate Navadurgas.
Right.
The first 5 of the Navadurgas, each of them represents one aspect, one stage in a woman's development. The Shailaputri is a daughter, is a young child. Then Brahmacharini is the Brahmacharya phase, the puberty phase. The phase, once after the menstruation, after menarche. And then Chandraghanta, the marital phase. Then Kushmanda, the pregnancy phase. Then Skandamata, the motherhood. So see the beauty of it. So
absolutely,
we celebrate women without having to degrade their femininehood, but modernity wants women to become masculinized, a copy of men, to be celebrated, to be shown as a successful person.
I think that is the modern perspective. Increasingly, I think we are making women, we are androgenizing the feminine, and then we are trying to make man totally into a feminine, sensitive kind of a soul. So it increasingly it seems as though we are distorting our gender identities. Is that your opinion? And
Yes.
if that is indeed your opinion, what exactly is to be done to kind of course correct?
Okay. Yeah, well, interesting question. Yes, that is definitely my opinion. I think in the name of gender equality, feminism, and all these modern movements, what is being happening is there is an attempt to feminize women and feminize men and masculinize women.
Absolutely.
So, and we see that taken to a very extreme level in some of the kind of activism, some of the kind of demands that is happening, especially in the West, but increasingly being adopted in India also.
Mhm.
And I see this being very, very dangerous to the social, psychological health of the society and of the people of the society, because it is like saying that one has to deny one's own identity, one's own gender, one's own, because but now saying that now I am he, and tomorrow simply I can get up and call myself the she. That makes no sense
Yeah.
to me. I mean no disrespect to any of the trans or any other third gender or any other identities, but there is a problem, and this problem has to be addressed, if not today, but maybe someday in near future. But yeah, as I said, the only solution to this is to revive, at least in Indian context, I can see, in the Hindu context, is to revive a dharmic education, revive the notion of dharma, and this notion of dharma is useful, is important, because we have the two categories of dharma. One is the samanya dharma, which are universal ethical values applicable to everybody, irrespective of gender or location or any other differences. But there is also Vishesha Dharma, the special duties, which are very specific. It is specific, it is a very diversified, diversified prescriptions, which is not same for any two persons. So the most useful, most famous is about, of course, the Varnashrama Dharma, but that is not the only thing about Vishesha Dharma. There is Three Dharma and there is also Purusha Dharma. So the notion of menstruation, the menstruation practices, the Rajo Dharma, all of them come under Three Dharma. And this Three Dharma, the very criteria, the very understanding of Three Dharma is based on the fact that women are distinct from men. It recognizes that biological reality, that emotional reality, and that karmic reality, I will say, that women and men are distinct. Yes, all are Atman, the Vedantic vision that there is Atman underlying all of identities, and that Atman is one. But at a Vyavaharika conventional level, there is diversity, there is distinction, and in recognition of that distinction, a dharmic prescription have been given, as Avatansky is saying in the comments, a customized dharma at individual level, because no two people are same. Our temperaments are different, our goals are different, our ideas are different, our even competencies are different, and our karmic burden is different. And among these differences, gender is very, very important. And that is why the Stri Dharma is different, Purusha Dharma is different. And one of the best examples how this plays out is in the context of Yajna. For example, both men and women have adhikara to perform Yajna, but the women gains, the man becomes eligible to perform a Yajna only when he is married. He cannot perform Yajna without being married to his wife. Similarly, the woman becomes eligible through Dampatya Yoga. Through the eligibility, competency of the husband, she also becomes eligible. She cannot do a yajna on her own. In fact, within the context of the ritual, the women have certain particular roles associated with her, and the man has certain particular roles. She is called as Sahadharma Charini, wherein Without her, the man does not get competency to perform his dharma. Whereas for women, her dharma itself is to is pativrata dharma, is to be
to support the man.
exactly. So
That being said,
yeah,
that being said,
yeah,
there have been instances, woman is seen as Shakti. There have been instances where she's the queen, she's the regent, she's a warrior. Okay, none of these are prescribed roles for a woman. So how do you, address this anomaly?
no, I don't think your statement is correct. That nothing in the Shastras stops a woman from becoming a queen. Nothing from the Shastras stops a woman from the point is actually what is happening is when we have to perceive things can be understood from three perspectives: from the perspective of karma, from the perspective of artha, and from the perspective of dharma. When we speak from the perspective of dharma means those actions which gives punyam, which in turn leads to swarga and sukha and chitta shuddhi. The dharma is opposite. Artha and kama gives materialistic results. Fine. So now when it is said that for women, Sri dharma is one which gives her is a prominent dharma, predominant dharma. It means that through Sri Dharma alone she can attain Punya, Swarga, etc. It does not mean that she is excluded from becoming a warrior if she has the wit, if she has the temperament, if she has the ichha to become. We have so many examples of women who are warriors. The most famous is, of course, Jhansi Rani, Chennamma, and others. But even before that, we have had among the Marathas also we had a very great women, even the mother of Shivaji, Jijabai, she was not just someone who inspired Shivaji to take up the arms for Hindava Swaraj, but he consulted her on these geopolitical matters. So it is not that women did not have power, or that is not so. The point is, owing to the fact that women have a different uh, emotional and psychological and physical setup than men, certain roles were more naturally came for women, and those roles were kept for women, and certain other roles for men. But this does not mean, I mean, of course, in a ritualistic context, there are certain, certain boundaries, certain restrictions, certain things that men cannot do, certain things that women cannot do. But apart from all those things, even we have examples of Draupadi. She may not be doing the role of what Yudhishthira is doing, but she is still doing a very important role. She is still yes, and that involves even taking the part of being part of the taking political decision making. And she was also the one who managed the entire office, the administrative office within the palace, and with all the activities within there. So we have to understand that, and the most important, of course, is that what we do for karma, what we do for the artha, and what we do for the dharma. So as long as artha and kama pursuits are not opposite to dharma pursuit, is not overcutting the dharma pursuit, these pursuits can be taken out. So everybody is free. Many people even violate dharma pursuit and pursue artha and kama. Nobody can stop them. But dharma leads to punya. If you want sukha, if you want chitta shuddhi, if you want swarga, you have to practice dharma. The opposite is naraka and punarjanma and more bandhana. But otherwise, so people have this confusion that because Dharma Shastra says this, so, do this, if you don't do this, these are the do's, these are the don'ts. They are under the impression that somehow the rest of it not discussed here is prohibited. That is not so. I hope this answers your question.
Absolutely. You also brought up the topic of how differences are to be celebrated. Everybody is different, every nature is different, and every manifestation is different. So the Sabarimala conundrum was like not celebrating differences, so to speak. I mean, that is a symptom of not being able to recognize the differences in some sense. So how exactly, how did differences come to be seen as oppressive, basically? That is the question. And how should we bring back the celebration of all aspects of life, celebration of differences?
See, I think the one of the most fundamental thing with Shabarimala and other issues is the framework we use to analyze and understand these practices is itself problematic. Is itself, for example, the framework of egalitarianism or gender equality. That the framework, by definition, assumes that inequality means oppression.
Mhm.
Right? Inequality means oppression, that there is an assumption. That is why the framework has come that we need gender equality. That is the goal which is being posited as an idea.
The
But
equality term does not apply in this context, according to me, but please go ahead.
yeah,
Because
it is definitely applicable in the sense that the argument made for the by the people who were opposing the temple traditions in Shabarimala were using exactly this argument of gender equality. They were saying that the prohibition of women between age 10 and age 50 from entering the Shabarimala temple constitutes violation of gender equality. It constitutes discrimination of women. Now, this is problematic because the very framework you are applying is problematic. First of all, there is, of course, there is no gender equality to begin with, because women before the age of 10 and after the age of 50 are allowed in the temple. So the prohibition is only for the limited between menarche and menopause, which is arbitrarily fixed as between age 10 and age 50. So even if we assume that there is a gender equality, gender inequality here, even then the fact is the temple tradition, the temple practices were not designed by keeping in mind any of these considerations at all. What was the consideration as far as the Shabarimala temple was concerned? That the deity is a Naishtika Brahmachari, and being a Naishtika Brahmachari, there are certain rules and regulations. The vrata, that deity was also following. That vrata includes that not coming in contact with any women of menstruating age, not any women who is undergoing periods, but any women of menstruating age, that is any women of childbearing age. So before menarche, the woman is a small child. After 50 years, the woman is like a grandmother or a mother or a grandmother. So for the Ayyappa Swami, those things do not violate his Naishtika Brahmacharya Vrata. But women of fertile age does violate. So it is this consideration, and as well as the fact that because the deity is Naishtika Brahmachari, what this means is the Vigraham there is a storehouse. Is what does it Vigraham? Vigraham is deity, as when the Prana Pratishtapana after it happens, the Vigraham is the deity and the temple becomes the house,
yeah.
abode. Hence we call it a Deva Alaya, right? House of the Deva. So what it means that there is the tattva of that brahmacharya which is seated there, and the energy associated with that tattva. So this is not useful, not good for women, because when the women of fertile age enter the temple over a long period of time, they become exposed to that brahmacharya energy. It also messes up with their menstrual cycle, their childbearing capacities. No experiments will be able to scientifically establish a cause and effect of this. We have to take the the shastras and the shastric means of interpretation to understand this, because science is limited to only to the physical body. It cannot actually correlate to what is happening in our subtle body. So that is why the problem with taking a scientific perspective. So we are keeping that aside. So the point is, the only way to understand all Hindu issues is to adopt Hindu perspectives, the Dharma-shastric perspective, the Agamic perspectives, the Vaidika perspective, the Tantrika perspective. yogic perspective, Ayurvedic perspective, whatever may be the issue, depends upon the issue and what perspective you adopt. But you adopt our own perspective to understand our practices rather than an alien perspective, which by definition is problematic. It does not have the tools to analyze the complexities of our practices, which also carry some kind of bias, some kind of prejudice within those frameworks at all. So, yeah, so this is my answer, that this is the way forward, that we need to understand our practices on its own basis before making
Absolutely. Absolutely. I guess we can keep talking about this. This is like, a pretty complex topic, actually. So do you want, I mean, this is a, the writing of this book must have been like super interesting. And now it has come to the international edition. Do you have anything special to share with the readers? And are there more projects in the annual right now?
Okay. So I think I don't have anything specific to say about this book per se, but I do want to someday maybe update this book, maybe 10 years, 15 years from now, with more information, newer things. But apart from that, after this book, I wrote all 3 more books, and my most recent book was Ishavasya Upanishad, the English commentary. It was published
Awesome.
last year. It was published last year. And I'm now currently working on a commentary, English commentary on the first 4 verses, the opening 4 verses of Manusmriti, wherein I'll be dealing with addressing a lot of misconceptions about the Smriti as a genre of text, the notion of the Shastra as a pramana, how should we approach textual study, and all these things I'll be taking up in that.
That is amazing. I would love to read that.
Thank you.
Thank you. That is awesome. I mean, it was a very lovely conversation. Atansti, do you have any questions? Are there any questions that have come up?
One of the benefits of having a moderator like Manjula ji, who is a practicing Hindu author, well known and knowledgeable in this topic, is to basically cover all the questions that we may have. But so thank you, Manjula ji, for awesome job. I have a question, Nitin ji. We talked about the Shaucha and Ashaucha in terms of women. I'm a feminist, right? So I have to ask, what kind of ashaucha do we have? Do we have any ashaucha for men where things are proscribed or prohibited, not just in terms of rituals, but maybe other things as well?
Yes, definitely. So, one of the most widely recognized and practiced ashaucha by everybody is with respect to death. When there is a death in the family, there are certain activities which are not to be done. You are in a state of impurity. In fact, if you are following ashaucha to the strictest condition, then you are not supposed to cook in your own house. You are not supposed to touch others. There are many rules. So death is one of the most important aspects that happens in our families, which creates ashaucha with the immediate family members, and similarly we have ashaucha. For example, if a person gets into an accident and there is a blood flow, even that is a state of ashaucha. Even such a person cannot practice certain activities such as puja and all, because there is a ashaucha even there. But what is interesting or unique about menstruation is it is a unique kind of ashaucha, because the women is in a heightened condition of rajas, and this kind of ashaucha is different from other ashaucha such as marana ashaucha, that is ashaucha associated with death. Similarly, this ashaucha associated with birth also, that is called as janma ashaucha. When there is a birth in the family, especially the mother, she is in a state of ashaucha for the first 10 days. So she is kept in a Sutika Graha, and after 10 days she comes out, and then the Namakarana ceremony is done. So the ashaucha is not something, the ritualistic impurity is not something which is there only for women. Menstruation is a case wherein it is only for women, but otherwise the ashaucha is a general category. There, those interested can check out one of my talks called Menstruation and Ashaucha, Understanding the Category of Impurity. It's on YouTube. It was done by Indus Talks for Center for Indic Studies. So therein I deal with different kinds of Ashaucha which are there, and so they can watch that.
And also we have the notion of men not being allowed to certain temples and vigraha, right?
That's right.
Yes, yes, indeed. So that we have so many temples with so many different kind of practices. Somewhere women are not allowed, somewhere men are not allowed, somewhere women are free, somewhere men are free. So this diversity is not there because they are not guided by gender considerations. They are guided by ritualistic considerations, which sometimes take upon manifest as stipulations regarding gender. The core reasoning is ritualistic, not not an intention to either prohibit or prescribe some gender.
I would say the rules are based upon the nature and the manifestation of the deity himself or herself, as the case may be. If she likes, well, in the Bhagavati temple, men are not allowed. Is that correct? Am I right in that?
I think there is one festival, I forgot the name, where the festival is done entirely by women in Kerala. I just forgot that it slipped from my mind. But I'll give one more example. In the Shakta temples where Pashubali happens, if I could remember correctly, the Pashu that has to be sacrificed cannot be a female. It has to be a male.
Oh gosh.
So are we saying now there is a gender discrimination against the male animals? So so we have to be very. That is why I say that these alien frameworks are incompetent and unsuitable to understand dharmic practice. We have to understand dharmic practices on their own basis, because there is always behind all ritual there is some logic. So that ritualistic logic has to be understood, not merely materialistic logic. I think that rhymes.
Thank you. Avatansi, you are muted.
I just quickly wanted to mention that we have a link for the purchase of the book in our chat box, and you can use the discount code Sridhar 108 to get 20% discount on the book, especially in the US or anywhere?
In North America.
Yeah, in North America. Okay, so hopefully people will use this opportunity to order the book. Are there any questions, Nishantji? Okay, let's see if he comes up. Otherwise, I think we are just over an hour, yeah, hour 10 minutes. So if there are no questions here, I would like to show my gratitude for Manjula ji for moderating this session, wonderful session. She asked all those relevant questions that left people speechless. And thank you, Nitin ji, also for explaining everything, that there were no follow-up questions. Thank you, Nishant ji, for the invocation here, and also a big thank you to our team in Hyderabad for all the logistical support, Koti ji and Vadde ji. Thank you very much. I hope everybody had a have had something to take home, and definitely please take home the book. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank
Namaste.
you.
Thank you
Namaste.
very much, Nitin ji.
Thank you. Namaste.
Namaste.
Namaste, Nitin ji. Thank you.